Hi, I'm Marcel, and welcome to me screaming into the void, mostly about books. I started talking about books online by blogging. That's where sort of the title of the channel is from. I wanted to read lesser-known classics and highlight more of them. One of the authors that I wrote very much about because I absolutely love her is Elizabeth Gaskell. And North and South is one of the first books that I wrote about at all on my blog. Elizabeth Gaskell is luckily getting much more deserved attention from us on the book hemisphere. And if you enjoy the Bronte sisters, if you enjoy Jane Austen, but also if you enjoy reading about class, Elizabeth Gaskell is your girl. North and South is her most famous book. And I also know that that is the one that has had a TV adaptation. And I think this book, if you enjoy reading about books from the 1800s, is such a brilliant book because this book talks a lot about everything that was changing with the industrial age and especially when it comes to class. Margaret Hale is the daughter of a clergyman who is ostracized by the church. So they have to move from her sort of quaint little village in the south up until the north. And he starts to be a private teacher for a lot of the new owners of industry, among other things, John Thornton, which is our male interest. And what you already there have is sort of the illustration of what I mean with all of the changes, including class. Now, class system before and after the 1800s, before and after with the industrialization, it's so different. There was such a massive change happening there because with the industrialization, you got the idea of social mobility. Before the industrialization, your class was set. You were born into your class, and you couldn't really do anything to move up or down except through marriage. You have some exceptions, of course, to the whole idea that class wasn't something that was social mobile. And Jane Austen sort of plays around with that idea, especially regarding Persuasion, where Anne Elliot is a part of the gentry. And she is, of course, interested in Captain Wentworth, who wasn't considered worthy of her because he wasn't a part of the gentry. But he made a name of himself through the military. So that was one of the few places where people could actually move up in society, especially men, before the industrialized age. And this is also talked about, for example, in Pride and Prejudice, where Elizabeth Bennet is defending herself against Mr. Darcy's aunt, where she is saying, he is a gentleman, I am a gentleman's daughter. In that sense, we are equal. So what she is saying is that Mr. Darcy is in a certain class, but she, because of her father, is also in the same class, even if she is on the verge of losing all of her money because her father doesn't have any male heirs. But as long as her father is alive, she is considered the same class as Mr. Darcy, and therefore are equal. But what happened, of course, during the 1800s is this idea of social mobility, and the idea that someone can work themselves up into the new gentry, what we today would call middle class. And this is what is happening with John Thornton. Now, John Thornton is in no way working class. He has never been working class. But he is someone who has sort of lost a lot of things and had to gradually work himself up into being now an owner of a factory in the north. And but feels sort of, okay, I don't really have the class background that the old gentry have, and therefore asks Margaret Hale's father to teach him what the male gentry would have been grown up with. So throughout the book, we see this conflict between Margaret Hale and John Thornton as they fall in love as a form of symbolic discussion of society at large between the gentry, who were a part of this old idea of you are born into the class that you're born, and this new idea of social mobility and being able to work yourself up into the upper middle class, especially. In addition to that, Elizabeth Gaskell worked a lot with this new thing called working class. Now, working class has always existed, of course. You have always had servants. But because of the factories, you, of course, had a lot of people moving in from towns, from the countryside into the city. So a lot of the people that used to work with timber, were fishermen, were farmers, would now move into the city and start working at the factories. Again, due to this idea of social mobility, that you could move yourself up in society. Now, if you're very focused on the working class, this is absolutely the book for you, but also not really the book for you. If you're really interested in reading a romance from a working class perspective, I would recommend Mary Bolton instead, which is much more pure working class, because of course both Margaret Hale and John Thornton, which are the love interest in this book, are both in sort of the gentry, middle class, that area, and the working class society around them is again more side stories. But this book is such a brilliant book in showcasing the social changes that were happening during the 1800s and in industrialized age. And this is such a wonderful way of learning more about this, because it's wrapped in this gooey romance between Margaret Hale and John Thornton, and them just loving one another and falling in love with one another without really understanding one another. And I think also one of the things that I just so fell in love with this book is John Thornton, who is going to classes with Margaret Hale's father. And Margaret Hale is, of course, invited into these conversations. So you can see the way that they are sort of being interested in one another, not just because of their sort of her beauty and him being a very handsome man, but very much their discussions and their personalities interacting with one another. And bonus point, Elizabeth Gaskell and Charlotte Bronte were best friends. Elizabeth Gaskell even wrote a biography on Charlotte Bronte. I haven't read it. I will, because Elizabeth Gaskell is absolutely wonderful. And thank you for just letting me rant about how much I love this wonderful author.